So we are well into the path to enlightenment. Lamrim Chenmo, we're already into the great scope, into the highest motivation. And that is the motivation to free all beings from suffering. So cultivating the great bodhicitta, the great compassion. Now, remembering that what we're doing is going through the whole path. Even though we might be here on this place, we're going to look at the whole path. We'll focus on our primary practice, but kind of water some seeds down the road. And where we are now is actually something we can incorporate today. It's something that I invite you to play with during the week. It's foundational practice in cultivating this heart that engages with others. And but before we get to that, I just want to bring us back to why we're here. Why are we here? Why do we suffer? What is this suffering or dukkha that we are engaged in? Why do we have ups and downs? Why do we have stresses, worries? Why do we have fear? Can we be fearless? Is it possible to engage in the world without stress? Sometimes the word dukkha, which is we translate often as unsatisfactoriness. Usually it's the truth of suffering. Another more modern word that they're using is stress. Conditioned existence has stress. There's stuff we really want, and I'm stressing to get it. There's stuff I really don't want, I'm stressing to avoid it. I have what I want, and now I'm stressing over keeping it. It's there's no place where I'm just okay, because as soon as I'm okay, I want to stay okay, and I'm worried about staying okay, and so there's this stress, and so can we live without that? This is really what the Buddha looked at: is this necessary? And there's this great quote from Tenzin Palmo, Venerable Tenzin Palmo. It's on Facebook. Some things are great on Facebook. It is very important to remember that we all have Buddha nature. That cannot be emphasized enough. We, all of us, are in the depths of our beings the combination of wisdom and compassion. That is our true nature. We have this Buddha nature. These qualities are already here. Our tragedy is that we identify basically with all the wrong things. We identify with our conceptual mind, our gross mind, our race, our gender, our professions, the roles that we are playing, our memories, our childhood, things which happened. We identify with our hopes and our fears and our plans. We live in our conceptual thinking mind, and we think this is who we are. And the great insight, the great breakthrough of the Buddha was to recognize that everything that we normally identify with is exactly who we are not. And it's also our tragedy. Because while it's fine to play a role, we all have roles to play. But if we believe in that role and think that's who we are, then we are in trouble. An actor may be a brilliant actor on stage, but if he comes to the off stage and still thinks he's Hamlet, and this is the problem, that we don't recognize our true nature. And I think it's really important to remember that as we engage in our daily life, we are just conditioned to start labeling things and identifying with things that have no basis in reality. Just nothing to do with reality. But they sure looks like it. It sure looks like And if we understand that there's a conventional reality that we engage with, but an ultimate reality that is the nature of things, we can just take a breath and not take all this so seriously. One of the common analogies, she used the role like a movie. But it's also, in this training, is talking about dreamlike. When you're in a dream, you're in a dream and it feels pretty real. You're scared, you're happy, you're excited, you're doing whatever. And if you had some bad news in a dream, it's pretty, when you're in a dream, it's pretty tragic. Then you wake up and say, no, it's just a dream. Well, but boy, when it happens and I'm not dreaming, it feels pretty intense. And we identify with it. And what we forget, and just on a conventional level without any great insight, that feeling will come and go. And you'll still be here. Won't you? But I'm really attached to it, aren't I? And I'll tell people about it. Oh, I'll tell people about it. I'll tell them about it for years. Remember that time when this happened? Let me tell you how terrible it was. It's not even present anymore. It wasn't, it's come, it's gone. But I'm very identified. This is our problem. We experience things, and based on our karma, our conditioned mind, we experience things on a certain level, and there's certain things I like and certain things I don't like. And there's some stuff I don't really care about. I don't like, neutral. And my whole life, I am going out there trying to get what I like and keep it, and trying to avoid this. And there's a lot of stress involved. But the very I like and don't like is based on something that isn't even true or accurate or real. And this is not some esoteric teaching. I like to just quote Dan Gilbert out of Harvard, who this is just Harvard research, which I talk about all the time, that says our mind, this is Western psychology, not even Buddhist, straight Western psychology, consistently simulates incorrectly how much happiness or how much suffering any activity in our life will bring us. Again and again and again and again. We really, really miss it. And we do it all the time. One of their studies shows that if something happens, something as big as losing a partner, getting a college degree, getting a job, getting an award, if it happened more than 3 months ago, it has almost no impact on your life today and your level of well-being. I mean, that's just how it is. And if we step back, we can actually recognize that. You will notice that you can have the great, wonderful award one day, and 2 weeks later, your mind's not on that award. It's on other things and worries and concerns. Unless you want to carry the award around and wear it and tell everybody how wonderful you are. And then now that's a whole nother stress, because now I want people to recognize me for this award. But if we just step back from our life, we will notice objectively that all the energy I'm putting in getting what I want and avoiding this and that has almost no impact on my level of well-being, period, whatsoever. It only has it for that moment, that short period of time, and then it goes. It's transient. And all the things we do are transient. And we're so caught up in it. We're so identified with it. It was so hard. Or it was so wonderful. And that was gone. And now it's so hard. Or this was so wonderful. And if only this happened. If this happens, it's gonna be all good. And this happens, and it's all good for a day or two. Now I have other worries. It's just a vicious cycle. And Buddha said, "Is this necessary?" And he found that it wasn't. He said, "You know what? If you just start living in the real world, none of this is necessary." So in a very straightforward, conventional way, all of this is to learn to live in reality. In order to live in reality, though, we actually have to do some things differently because our mind is not going to allow us to go there. Our mind is going to tell us some wonderful stories. Oh yeah, let me tell you the story of my life. Let me tell you how difficult, how wonderful. Just I can tell you the story, and and because I think it, I believe it, and then everything I think I start believing. If someone's nice to me, guess what? They're my friend. If somebody's not nice to me, they're my enemy. That's who they are, and that's what they are. They're not. That same person who can be nice to me today can do something not so nice tomorrow. That same person who did something not so nice today can do something nice tomorrow. Right? It's changeable, and we all had that. But for some reason, if I like somebody, I'll tolerate the things they do that are not so nice. And if I don't like somebody, even if they're trying to be nice to me, I think they have ulterior motives, and they're really a jerk. So our mind tells stories, and we have feelings, and feelings come and they go. Feelings come and go. Feelings come and go. But I want to grab onto it. I'm really sad. I'm really depressed. I'm really happy. I. And so what she's pointing out here is we identify with all the wrong things. We identify with every feeling and thought that comes to mind, and we say, this is me. And we suffer. I'm just saying it's not necessary. Our nature is Buddha nature. Our nature is wisdom and compassion. Our very being is already pure. And it's not labeling. And it's not attaching. And it's not delusional. The problem is it's covered up, right? Our Buddha nature is covered up with delusion, with karma, with kleshas, with these imprints that condition and limit us. And so the Buddhist path is to clear away all of that delusion and see clearly. In order to do that, we need to start picking the weeds and start putting in the flowers, right? So I need to stop ruminating and watering all the negative mental states and afflictions, and I need to start planting some seeds around wisdom and compassion. But in order to do that, I actually have to have a mind that starts recognizing this. And so we started with the ethics. We looked at, we're getting into concentration and wisdom. But in order to really make the soil nutritious, we need bodhicitta. And that's where we're at now. We really want to cultivate the mind of bodhicitta. The bodhicitta is the great aspiration to liberate all beings from suffering. That I am more concerned about you than me. That liberates, because you know where all of my suffering comes from? Me being more important than you. As long as I'm more important than the 7 billion others, and not even counting animals and all the other living beings, as long as I'm number one, I'm in trouble. I will suffer. Because I am looking out for me and mine. There is no inner peace found in tending to the needs of me and mine. But it will be found in we and ours. That's where it's present. Everything I have in my life is because of you. Right? Everything. My clothes, my food. Matter of fact, literally a shirt. You bought me a shirt. Thank you. But who made the shirt? You know, where'd the cotton grow? Who, you know, on and on. The dyes, the people that made that possible, where I learned to read and write, the building that we're in, who built this, and why did they build this? And, you know, the idea of even having education as a public school system, which was created here, and all the people that created that situation for us to be in a school, and who made the nails and the boxes of nails and the marketing for these nails. Everything I have is because of everybody else. But I forget that. I really think this is mine. And I look out for me first and what I want. And I see the world through my self-cherishing attitude, which labels what I like and what I don't like. And I create all the suffering. But if I can start to see things more accurately, like Everything I have in my life is because of others, because that's accurate. I start to understand that we're very interdependent, which is again accurate. I'm interdependent. Everything about me is dependent upon and relational to whatever's happening and who's around me, what the environment is. Right? Right now, I'm appearing as a teacher of Buddhism. A little while ago, I was a pedestrian. A little while before that, I was a client. A little while before that, I was a friend. So these are just labels that are arising in dependence upon the situation I'm in at that moment. And I'm none of those things. But in that role appears in dependence upon who I'm talking to and what's going on, and then it comes and it changes. And now I'm in a new role. But none of them are permanent. And they're not who I am. Now that's just starting to see things accurately. But our mind doesn't naturally go there, does it? So we need to train the mind. We need to train the mind to be accurate. And we do that through creating the conducive environments of ethics and concentration. And if we can start to loosen the grip on me being the most important being in the world, automatically I'm going to let go of a lot of suffering. And I'm going to be motivated to truly make the best use of my life. And this is where the aspiration of bodhicitta arises. And so as we go to cultivate bodhicitta, we're in the stage now of one method. One method that we are on, there's two methods that are talked about in this text. One is 7-point cause and effect. 7-point cause and effect. It's technically 6 causes, 1 result. But there's a 0. So we've been talking about 0. 0 is in order to enter this, we really want to start with some equanimity. And equanimity, this equality, this calmness, this deep state of equanimity is the depth of the ocean. The waves come and go, emotions and labeling, but the depth of the ocean is untouched by all the waves. It notices the waves. The waves are a part of the ocean, but we're not the waves, we're the ocean. And the waves will come and go. This equanimity of stability, of being engaged equally with all the events and people in our life. They're just as important as any other, just as meaningful. Now, it's something we've been talking about for 2 weeks now. And in the context of this teaching to go to the other steps, they focus it on other beings. So, and there's a meditation that really looks at people I like, people I don't like, people are neutral, and we meditate on those, and we start to see, why do I like this person? Why do I not like this person? This person I really hate today, that I've known for a long time, well, this person I once liked. I once liked this person. They're kind of nice. Now I don't like them. Now they're pure evil. They're really neither. This person I really like today, I like them. You know, did I always like them? What is it I like about them? Do they do things for me? And these neutral people, I don't really know very well. If I got to know them, maybe I'd like them, or maybe I wouldn't like them. But what we start to see is the labels start changing based on how I'm feeling, based on the situation, based on what's happening now. And so if we start to bring into meditation, start noticing that the same person I used to love, I don't like at all, and the person I like a lot has some of their faults too. You know, they do things. And some of the people I don't know, they're just like me. They want happiness. They want to avoid suffering. They've known sadness and despair. They're trying to get their needs met, and they're trying to learn how to live just like me. So is everybody. And they start to recognize that we're kind of all in this together. And people that are doing harmful things, it's because they're suffering, right? Why else would you do stupid things like that? If you have peace and joy and love, you're bringing peace and joy and love. If you've got pain and misery and angst, guess what you give everybody? Yeah. So when somebody's really doing harmful things, we know that they're in pain. And we know they're suffering. Which doesn't make what they're doing okay, but it certainly gives me a lot more spaciousness to deal with what they're doing rather than who they are. And so learning to have some equanimity around people and events in our lives, it's really helpful. It gives you spaciousness. And it lays the foundation for the next step. I'm just going to run through the steps and we'll come back to the next step. Yeah, we're doing pretty good for time. So the 6 steps would be, number 1, recognizing all other beings as having been your mother. And that's what we're going to come back to. If you can start seeing all other beings as having been your mother and get a realization around that, leads to the next step, recalling the kindness of your mother. You start thinking about all their kindness, how much they did for you. And then the third one is the desire to repay that kindness. And once you have that, you really reflect on all that they've done for you. There's a natural, I want to repay their kindness. Want to repay that kindness, then you start to see that the next result is a great love, jumpa chimpa, great love. That you see all beings as lovable. And once you accomplish that, the next is the great compassion for all beings. And you don't want your loving children and mothers, brothers and sisters suffering. And you set the great determination that I will do anything to free them. And at that moment, 7, the great bodhicitta. So 6 causes, 1 result. Each leads to the next. We don't get to 7 easily, right? It's a work in progress. But if we take some time, we can start ripening our mind to have 1 lead to the next, the next, the next. And we don't need an incredible amount of deep level achievement to start to crack this delusional mind that makes me more important than you. Or start noticing how I do so much in my life for the people I like, and I spend a lot of time even wanting to harm people I don't like, hoping they get theirs. And see the senselessness of that, and just starting to realize everyone you meet is doing the best they can. And every interaction I have is an opportunity to cultivate my highest potentials and to be of benefit and to make this life meaningful. We can start there. We can start there. But we need to start where we are. Because what happens is we come in and we hear this teaching, and this is a great aspiration. This is not for, there's no wussiness here, right? One of my teachers says, this is not for wusses. This path is a path that is not for wusses. But it doesn't mean I hear this great teaching and I'll be able to go out tomorrow and see all beings as my mother. It does not mean that. And all too often we start judging ourselves on that level. I've heard this great talk. I want to be compassionate. I want to be better. And then I fail. And I get mad. And I get angry. Or I have a feeling and I react. Well, guess what? You're human. You have karma and kleshas. You also are human and you have divine nature. So being human is not the excuse. It's just the conditioned existence reality of the moment. And our reality is that we need to improve and remove this veil. But it doesn't remove itself, and it doesn't remove it because I want it to be gone. It removes it over a continuous, steady effort. So when we leave here and we find out that we're not enlightened yet, who do you need to be compassionate towards? Yeah. This does not work beating yourself up. It does not work that way. And if you're going to compare yourself to an enlightened being, you're probably going to lose. I just got news. It didn't work so well. We get this teaching and I think, man, I got angry and I got upset at so-and-so and I'm such a bad person. Really? Like you're spending your time working on the benefiting all beings and you screwed up and you're a terrible person. I've got news for you. Let's get some perspective. There's a lot of people out here aren't even thinking about how to improve the quality of their life or others. Let's perspective and don't compare ourselves with the Dalai Lama. Okay. Why don't you compare yourself with how you were a year ago? You want to see an accurate sense of progress. Look at how you were a year ago or 5 years ago. That might be a little more accurate, okay? So as we enter into this, we want to really understand and be compassionate with ourselves that there's the potential you might screw up. And that's okay. Beating myself up does not make me a better human being. What makes me a better human being is acknowledging I screwed up and working on doing it better next time. That makes us a better human being. And that cultivates the potential. So we want to really be gentle as we enter into this path. So we've talked about equanimity and how to really start bringing that same level of equal attention into all of our activities and not being caught up in attachment and aversion and being much more grounded about all things that arise and come and go. And laying the foundation of equanimity, we start entering the idea that trying to see all other beings as having been your mom. Now, some of us may not have had a great relationship with our mom and has issues. And so they always say, well, it's an idea. It's the idea of a mom, of a caring mom. The typical symbol of any mother, even ones who weren't very healthy, is, they did a lot just to bring you into the world at birth. And there's an incredible amount that they've endured just to take care of you. And in general, the vast majority of moms would literally cut off their right arm for their kid. I mean, that's by nature generally true. It's not always true. So sometimes we have a mom and we've had a difficult relationship with, and it's a little challenging. And so they offer the idea of, that caregiver, that really kind caregiver. But I do want to, before you jump to that, is sometimes we need to revisit our relationship with our mom or our dad, our parents. Because a lot of times, and I hear it, I'm this way because of my mom or my dad. They did this to me, so that's why I'm like this. And I have to go to therapy to overcome that because they did this to me. It's an interesting discussion because they did this one thing to you, so therefore let's say, what's an outcome? I have a fear of intimacy because of how I was raised. Let's just say that when I'm picking. Well, they also fed you and clothed you and taught you how to read and write, and everything else you are is because of them too, right? And they did this one thing, and I'm pinning everything else on this one thing they did. And that's what made me like this. But they also taught me how to, tie my shoes. They taught me how to, feed. They clothed me. They fed me. They did all these other things. And if I'm good at this or good at that, I'm not saying, well, it's because of my parents. They're only getting the blame. So there's this nice little thing back in therapeutic settings was blame mom and dad. The acronym is be mad, right? And we could spend a lot of time blaming them, or we could also acknowledge that they also did a lot of things that were really helpful, and that the totality of who I am is not just because of them. It's because of the other environments. It's because of my school. It's because my neighbors. It's because of just all these myriad of conditions in my life as well. And sometimes we may be able to heal some of those relationships with our parents, because you will find that if your parents were dysfunctional or unhealthy in some way, I bet their parents were too. And they were doing the best they could with what they had. Which again doesn't take away from needing to heal some stuff that wasn't okay. I mean, we still need to heal that. We need to address it. But it's not the totality of it all. But in this context, from a Buddhist point of view, in order to really understand it, we have to say that, again, this karmic imprint is that my consciousness has had many lives. They say since beginningless time. That the consciousness that now is recognizing myself as John has had many other forms over countless eons. And this is my latest one. And so have all of you. So have all of you. And the idea then is that if we've all been around eons of times, at some point, we've all been related. At some point, even if we were animals, if I was an ant, I mean, think how many ants are. You could have been my aunt or mom. That we start recognize we've been doing this dance a long time, and that at some point we've all been each other's mom at some point, or child, or brother and sister, again and again and again. And it's not a far reach if you have some idea of continuous existence. It is a harder reach if you don't, right? And so that's where we want to play with it, because I like to keep things really practical and let you build a view that's based on discerning wisdom. So because someone says there's a past life is not the reason to believe there's past life. It just doesn't work like that. If you can investigate it and it seems to make sense, then maybe you can accept it. But let's just go with what we see and know now. And what we see and know now, and I'll give just kind of a view about an idea that there could have been something more before, is the idea of your mind. In order for this moment in my mind to exist, there had to be a previous moment of mind, right? It had some previous consciousness. Before that, there had to be some previous consciousness. If you look at a number line, there's no beginning and end to any number line. There's no point that is a fixed point on a number line. Even if you break it down to a second, then a millisecond, then a millisecond. And you're going to start seeing that it just breaks down again and again and again. And this moment that we're experiencing now is already gone, and another one's already arisen, and the one before that is labeling this one. And I only know this one because of the moment before. And this is what Buddha started to investigate, is this idea of mind, and started noticing that my awareness of who I am today, if we start tracing it back, well, where did your first moment of consciousness come from? Where did it first come from? There has to be a cause for a result. How could you have a first moment of consciousness without a previous moment of consciousness? How does that work? And what they find is there's not an answer for that. There just isn't. And so they don't really spend a lot of time saying it came from nothing, because that doesn't make sense. It had to come from something, previous moment of mind. And so there's a previous moment. Now, the Buddha, had his realizations, and if you look in mind, and a lot of people will go down through meditation, and they'll start to, when you get into the nature of mind and awareness, you can trace your awareness now, and then some of them start seeing previous lives and previous stuff, and you can look back. Now, just because I said that, again, is not a reason to believe it. You have to check it out. You have to investigate these things. So, but this is what the Buddha said, and what others have found over time, And what they've noted then, if you look at even books now, that they, people have, when your body dies, there's all these life after death experiences. There's a pretty famous neuroscientist who had his own experience. He was a scientist. He never believed any of this. Then he had his experience. Now he's going around giving TED Talks and writing books, Hey, there's this consciousness that exists when the body's not, functioning. And there's these things that happen. So you might investigate those. But let's just say hypothetically we play with an idea. Let's just play with an idea. Play with an idea that when this body of mine dies, my mind will continue. My consciousness will continue. I mean, that's what Buddhism says. Buddhism says that your mind is a continuum. It's a river. It's a river. And that river is always moving. And I'm in a new moment now. It's not the last moment. By the time I finish saying this, I'm in a new moment. And this moment's dependent on the moment before. I can only recognize this based on my cognizance of the previous moment. So they spent a lot of time on this. We don't spend much time on that. Because I think I'm John and I like ice cream and, this is how things are. And I don't question and start thinking, is the ice cream actually delicious? We've had that talk a million times. Never gets old though, does it? For me. Might get old for you. There's no delicious in the coffee. There's no delicious in the ice cream. There's no delicious in the salad. There's no delicious in the pasta. Right? For those of you who are new, if there's delicious in the pasta, everyone who eats it would find it delicious. Right? But there's some people who don't like pasta. And some people don't like that kind of pasta. And some people are allergic to things. It's not in the pasta. The delicious is in my experience with it based on my karma and the food I'm interacting with, which I'm labeling as pasta. I mean, that's just more accurate. We don't live in an accurate world. We see something, and that's the way that is, and we grab onto it, we make it solid, we reify it, and we identify it, which isn't the way the world is. And that's just on a conventional level. That has nothing to do with Buddhism. That's just reality. And Buddhism is always bringing a reality. So when we get to this next level where it's asking you to look at this multiple life thing, and it's hard to prove. And then we have to kind of just, if there's a basis from which I can discern and investigate that, I do that. But right now, in the essence of time, I just want us to play with the idea. Play with the idea that when this body dies, my mind will, based on its karma, based on how I've lived, based on most heavily on the state of mind at the time of death, will experiencing something beyond my body. And then what it says is, based on that, I'm going to be drawn into my next experience. And my next experience is going to be really determined by the habits and conditions I'm playing out now. What you water grows. A lot of anger and resentment, it's not going to look so good. A lot of love and compassion, it can look a little better. I'm just saying. Habits and conditions that we grow. And then suddenly I'm going to start experiencing another body. And it's not like this consciousness goes into another body. It's like the consciousness is already here, and I'm just experiencing the world differently. And I might start looking down and notice that I've got paws. And I might want to chase a mailman. And and things are different. And that's my consciousness. Or I might see myself, as a little kid wanting to stick my finger in a light socket for no apparent reason. But that the consciousness goes on, and based on how I live my life, I start seeing myself differently, seeing the world differently, and I'm experiencing things differently. Now, for me, what really helps, that makes a lot of sense around the karma and how that plays out in my next life, is looking at young kids. Because if you look at young kids, you're going to notice they already come with different personalities, different predispositions. You can take twins, genetic twins, and one of them might be musical and one's not. One has this kind of personality, one has a different one. Scientifically, they're genetically the same material, but consciously, they're very different. Some kids come in and they naturally, I have this friend of mine whose daughter immediately on their own at preschool would not hurt another living being. Even started a campaign, don't kill the snails, because the kids were stepping on snails. And this kid, by the time she was 10, had read every Buddhist book in the library in the kids section. Now, her mom didn't tell her to do that. She was vegetarian on her own, If you start noticing kids and how they come in the world, you're going to notice that they're bringing with them a lot of habits and personality and certain things that they're already coming into the world with that aren't, just environmental impact. So for me, I see that and I go, that kind of works for me with karma. I get that. But in this view, it says, then, if we've all been doing this dance for a long time, we've all had different relationships. We've all been friends. We've all been enemies. We've all been strangers. And we've all been mothers, and fathers, and kids. And so the idea is to just start opening your mind and playing with that idea about others. And if we can start calling to mind that thought process to play with the idea that we've all been around and that we've all been each other's mother, you're going to find it's going to soften the heart pretty easily. That annoying person yelling at you has been your mother at some point. It's different. And the thing here is, if we have a good relationship with our mother in this life, well, that's wonderful. We would say, well, if somebody did you a favor a year ago and somebody did you a favor today, is the favor a year ago more important or less important than the one today? If someone was nice to you a year ago, does that still count? And most people would say, yeah, that counts. So then we'd say, well, because Buddhists are very logical, if somebody was your mother in another life, isn't that just as important as this life? And we start going, So all of you at some point, the idea is, have diapered me, fed me, taken care of me. I appreciate it very much. And I often, I like to teach things in a way that stick a little bit. So one of the things that I do around there is, in a lot of spiritual circles and a lot of yoga classes, people say namaste. And, kind of the beautiful definition of that is I honor and recognize the divine in you, right? Your pure nature. So I like to think of it as mamaste, which is I recognize and honor the mother in you that's taking care of me, instead of namaste, namaste. And for me, that little twist, sometimes helps me when I'm in a difficult interaction with others. I'm thinking about that namaste, that we've all been each other's mother. So this week, and the idea around the Lamrim teachings, remember, is not that you're collecting information. This is not a philosophical exercise here. This is not a lecture class. It's the idea that you're going to meditate and see if you can integrate some of this into your daily life, to try it out, to see if I can experience this, to put it into action. So, last couple of weeks was equanimity, trying to be a little more balanced with people and things and events. And this week is trying to recognize, and even if we don't get to mothers, maybe we start recognizing the good qualities in others. That's the way the Dalai Lama, he likes to lenient it that way. Recognizing others as friends. And so maybe a starting point's there. His Holiness says he likes to greet everybody as an old friend. I like that. I like that a lot. Because, old friends, they can do some stupid things, but they're still an old friend. Because, That's Charlie. You know Charlie's an old friend. Yeah, you know he does. But it's Charlie. Right? Known him for 20 years. And everybody we greet, if we could greet them as an old friend, you know, lightens up. Because they were a friend once, maybe. Or a mother. And if you can bring this in, it's amazing if you, especially when you start shifting it towards all living beings. I was, Tubden Children, you know, gave this whole series of Lamrim teachings. And who she cited? She cited Berzin, Alexander Berzin. He's an incredible Buddhist teacher. And if you ever want a resource about Buddhism on the net, Berzin Archives. And she tells the story of Alexander Berzin, that he had lost his uncle, and he was very close to his uncle. He really liked his uncle. And, you know, it's sad when you lose someone you love. And, but, you know, he's a Buddhist, and he went back to his Buddhist trainings in Dharamsala, and in Dharamsala in India, lots of places like that. I know my room in India had lots of spiders and bugs and bees. I had a big beehive right out my door. And and he went back and he didn't like spiders apparently, and big spiders. And one day he was there and this big spider was right there, and you know that thought just, you know, I want to kill that thing. But then he goes, well, I'm a Buddhist, I can't really kill that thing. And then it just occurred to him that maybe that spider is his uncle. And he said, wow, that was such a different thought. Maybe that's my uncle. And then his relationship with spiders changed. And he's, you know, hopefully he took good care of the spider. I don't know what happened then. But if we start with a human level and we start considering that everyone you meet is just like you, everyone you meet wants happiness. Everyone you meet wants to avoid suffering. Everyone you meet has known sadness and despair. Everyone you meet is trying to get their needs met. Everyone you meet is learning how to live. That is just the nature of all beings. Then it gives us some space to start. Which does not mean we let people do harmful things to us. It does not mean that. There's no compassion there. Compassion is to remove suffering. So compassion is responding to unhealthy things in healthy ways. That's compassionate. Without labeling the person the unhealthy thing they're doing. Because they also are Buddha nature, and they also are capable of good things. They're also capable of harmful things. And so are we. So are we. Right? When I start judging others, man, that mirror certainly gets in the way of my life. I've done this, I've done that, I've done, you know, and but I've worked on being better. Others have their struggles, and so as we enter into these points in cultivating bodhicitta, we want to create some space around others and recognize their Buddha nature, recognize their qualities, recognize that the difficulties they have, they share with the world in their suffering, and that's all the more cause to respond. And then start seeing if we can expand our mind just a bit and start thinking about their good qualities without minimizing their unhealthy behavior. Because sometimes we go too far. You've been my mom, you can mistreat me. That's not what we're on. You've been my mom, I honor and love that, and will help you by having good boundaries in our relationship. And like good parents do, right? Good parents have boundaries with their kids. You don't get dessert till after you've eaten dinner, right? You don't go play till you cleaned your room. You know, that's what loving parents do. They have boundaries. And likewise, we want to have those loving, healthy relationships with others. So as we enter in this 7-point cause and effect, equanimity, and then we start seeing others as, and I'm going to give you the half step of becoming friends, of having been an old friend, someone we care for. And if you can shift it up and do a mama's day once in a while, it's a good thing. That we've all been each other's mother, that we've been in this together, that we've created all this karma together, life after life after. And see if that doesn't shift the way that I interact with others. Because it's as though this might seem like a difficult concept. What is accurate is we're all in this together. And the more healthy people out there, the better world this is. And the more that you get your needs met, the better world this is going to be. That's just the way things is in this web of life. The more people that we're helping, the better the world is. And sometimes we don't feel like we can help others, but we can always improve ourselves. And as we improve ourselves, you just improve the world by one more person. So you're always making a difference. It starts here, though. And it starts by recognizing that how I'm labeling you is not accurate. There's no way I know you. No matter anyone that we know, our best friend, and we think we know our best friend, don't we? We don't know a fraction of their life. We don't know moments of emotions and feelings they've had in their life. People are human, and they're not stagnant. They change, and we change. You're not the same person you were a year ago, and you're not the same person you were 2 years ago. And guess what's going to happen tomorrow? You're going to be different. We're the river. We're not the lake. We're the ocean, and we're not the waves. There's nothing stagnant here. Things change. Now, you can consciously start watering the seeds you want to grow and start questioning the way we label things, especially when we label something good and bad. Attachment and aversion. Is there anything that's really good and anything that's really bad? Is there? It's a good investigation. Thought for the week. Even the most terrible things that have happened in our life generally led to the things that were best about us in our lives. The things that were awful had us grow and change. And in order for that thing to happen, there was a bunch of other things that happened to make that happen. It's not the one thing. It's not the last shot at the game that won the game. It's all the shots before that made the last shot possible. It's a river. It's not a pinpoint stagnant thing ever. And when we make something stagnant, we're delusional. These are tips for delusional thinking. If you make anything stagnant, you're automatically delusional. As soon as you see someone, they're like that. Delusion. It's delusion. Or, I'll be really happy if. That could be accurate. I'll be happy for a few minutes if. That's probably. I'll be happy for a little while if. Could work. But the idea of Buddhism is, coming back to our start, is if I recognize my true nature, I'm already happy. And it's not conditioned on what's happening out there. And I'm not spending all my wheels trying to rearrange the chairs on the Titanic. I'm getting a safety boat and getting off. It's not about trying to make this comfortable. It's about trying to liberate yourself from it all and help others do the same. So, this week, let's see if we can focus on seeing the good qualities of others, seeing the friendship of others, seeing others as an old friend, and if you can kick it up a notch and think about, maybe you've been my mom before. And even if you can't go there, maybe honoring them as somebody's mom. because we're all in this family, the human family. And we, as Buddhists, would include all living beings. So before you step on that spider, maybe that's your uncle or mom. Yeah, keeping those in mind too. And then next week, we'll go through. So you can see how this works, right? Equanimity, seeing everyone as being your mom. Then you call to mind all the kindnesses of your moms. Then you want to repay it. And then all of a sudden, all living beings, the next step, become these lovable beings. This great Jampa Chimpa love for all beings that you don't want any harm to come to. And then compassion. And then out of that compassion, the great determination, and then bodhicitta. So we'll go through these, and then we'll do equalizing, exchanging self for others. That's the other method. So these are two methods for cultivating the great compassion of bodhicitta. Okay. Okay. Right on time. So you have your homework, and I will be here next week, right? No, I won't be here next week. I won't be here next week. But I'm still teaching next week. How's that? Yeah. So I will webcast from Newark, California, where I will be arising in the interdependent role of grandpa. So I'll be with my grandkids that day, and we'll set up, usually it's their playroom. We'll see what happens. And so we'll still have the teaching. Everything will be as normal, but there'll be a screen here. So I'll look a lot bigger. But again, it's just labels and delusions. And all right, well, thank you all for tonight. We'll go ahead and do a dedication, dedicating the merit and wisdom that we have accumulated here for the benefit of all beings. Let us dedicate the virtue and wisdom we've accumulated both here today and throughout our lives, both individually and collectively. We dedicate this for the benefit of all beings. May all beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness. And may we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lives to purify our own minds, to achieve enlightenment, so we can truly help liberate all beings. All right, thank you all so much. And for those of you online, thank you for attending as well. If you want